What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over early game tips for Fortnite. I made a video a week or two ago about late game and going over how to play late game, and a lot of people said they also struggle with early game, so I thought I would make this video about that. If you guys do find this video helpful and informative, as always, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below if you would like to see a mid-game tips video. Mid-game is really the most kind of ambiguous part of the game. I feel like early game, people know to play a certain way, and in-game people know to play a certain way, but mid-game, a lot of people are just kind of trying to exist to mid-game. So let me know if you would like to see that, and if you would like to use me for a supporter creator, my code is EvolveJake. It's underneath the webcam at all times. The first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to early game is getting a good landing. If you have a better landing than everybody else around you, you're going to be able to take advantage of that and likely kind of be set. You're going to be faster in the game than they are, essentially. And there's a few things with landing that not a lot of people know. So you get glider locked in Fortnite once you reach a certain altitude to the ground. And this is when you're high in the sky, you're able to open and close your umbrella or glider as you please. But once you reach a certain altitude to the ground, you are glider locked and you can no longer do this. And a lot of people don't like that, and it's frustrating because they don't understand it. But really what this comes down to is you need to be careful what you're gliding over, because when it comes to getting glider locked, once you're glider locked, you cannot change that. And the game doesn't care if you are actually that close to the ground. It just cares about like your nearest point to the ground. So if you're gliding over a mountain, you run the risk of getting glider locked really high in the sky, and then you're going to have a really just terrible drop because of that. Same thing goes with trees sometimes. Large structures, kind of like the blimps or whatever floating in the sky. The pirate ship, if you fly over these incorrectly, you can make yourself get glider locked sooner, and that's going to be detrimental to your landing. So be very mindful of what you're gliding over when it comes to landing at your POI or what you're diving at. And ideally, you would want to dive over water, because for whatever reason, the point at which you get glider locked is lower if you are gliding over water or if you're diving over water, because it counts that like under the water part as the land. So if you're able to set your drop up where you're diving over a body of water, that is going to be the ideal drop, and that is going to be what is going to give you the fastest drop. Another big mistake I see a lot of people make is they wait until the battle bus is just over their POI, and then they jump and then they dive straight at the POI. And that makes sense. They're like, I want to land at this POI, so this is when I'll jump. But in actuality, you want to jump a little bit sooner than that, more often than not, before the battle bus is over your POI, because of the glider lock situation that we just talked about. Once you get glider locked, you just have to be that way until you reach your POI or until you reach the ground. So it's ideal to jump a little bit before the bus is at your POI, dive straight down, and then glide to the POI, and you will actually be faster than a lot of other people. So don't wait until the bus is just over your POI to jump, unless you're at a POI that's surrounded by water, where this would work out quite well. And then make sure you're very mindful of what you're gliding over. That way you don't get yourself glider locked early. That glider lock mechanic can be annoying, but it's one of those things where not a lot of people understand it for some reason. And once you're able to understand it and kind of play around it, like I said, jumping and diving over water, you get a huge advantage over other players in the early game. The next most important thing, I think, is to take note of like how many people are landing at your POI and where they are going, you know? Let's just say, for example, the POI has a red house, a blue house, a yellow house, and a green house. If you see two people landing yellow house and one person landing green, you probably want to go to like the blue or the red one, you know? So, and not only is it beneficial knowing that like I want to go to the uncontested house, it's also important knowing where you can expect other players to be coming from after you've done landing, you know? If everybody seems to be landing on the opposite side of the POI as you, you know that you're probably going to have a somewhat safe like early game, and you're going to be able to third party those other players. And once the fights do kind of break out, if you paid attention to where other people are landing, you're going to know where the other players in your POI are likely coming from, and just kind of through process of elimination, you can predict what's likely to happen next. So paying attention to where people are landing, not only just like how many people are coming to your spot, but where exactly in your spot they are landing. You're not always going to be able to do this though. If you have a much better drop than other people, you might not be able to see them land, like if their drop just sucks, but that's okay, because you're going to get loot much faster than them, and then they're likely not going to be a problem for you anyways. Oftentimes just landing on a weapon is better than landing on a chest. People prioritize chests because there's potential for better loot, but if you kind of have the choice of landing on a chest or landing on a pistol next to that chest, even though the pistol oftentimes isn't a desirable weapon for a lot of players, getting that guaranteed gun is nice because the player that goes for the chest has to open the chest and then pick up the weapon and then acquire a target to shoot back at you. If you just get the gun, you're probably going to be able to do a lot of damage to them before they have even opened the chest, and that is going to net you an easy kill. There are weapons that aren't worth landing on sometimes, or items that aren't worth landing on sometimes, like a fishing pole, floor loot, grenades, whatever, but more often than not, going for the guaranteed weapon is better than going for the chest. If you are 50-50ing a chest with somebody, like you and that player are both going for the chest and there's no other loot nearby, the weapon, the loot comes out on the right side of the chest for whatever reason. It's not random. The items always drop on the right side of the chest. So you can kind of position yourself to block the other player's perspective of the right side of the chest, or just kind of pre-aim the right side of the chest and spam the pickup button. Auto pickup weapons can work for some people. I used to use this setting in the past. I don't use it anymore. It seems like it's kind of like been times where it's really OP for early game, and there's been times where it's not as OP, but auto pickup weapons can be somewhat helpful in you acquiring weapons faster than other people. Another thing that can be beneficial when you're landing is if you land on like the roof of a house, that way you like stop yourself from landing and then just jump off rather than waiting until you hit the ground. So if there are large objects that you can kind of use to get a drop early, that is beneficial. Also things like zip lines, you can hit them and then just drop immediately. Things of that nature are actually quite helpful when it comes to landing. You need to be super mindful of third parties in early game. This kind of goes back to what I was saying before when it came to paying attention to where people land. But when it comes to early game fights, not everybody is going to have good loot or a lot of loot off spawn. You're probably going to be somewhat limited in what items you have, how many items you have, how much shield you have. So playing around third parties is super imperative. I would say early game is the point at which the game is the most random because you and everybody around you are very limited on what items you can have. So take advantage of third party timing when you can. But if you're having a fight that's really dragging on, kind of be really mindful of those third parties. I feel like audio is very, very integral early game. If you aren't good at using sound to your advantage in game, there is the visualize sound effect option in the settings that can be really, really beneficial for early game. So much of early game is just timing more so than skill in game, I would say. So if you're able to be the person that capitalizes on third party timing, that's great. But if you kind of go too fast and didn't keep track of how many people there were, then this can really be a negative for you. Like, let's say you know for a fact only 3 people landed at the POI, you and 2 others, and you hear those other 2 people fighting, then you know that you could probably just third party it. But if you saw like 8 people landing there, it's really not that important to rush to that one fight because you're probably just going to get third partied. In those like kind of like chain third party situations, pretty much always the last person to get involved is the person that wins. And that is one of the reasons why it's super important to like know how many people are at your POI and when to expect them to be coming to you and where they'll be coming to you from. Another thing is just to take advantage of the hollow chests, the NPCs and the vending machines at your area. If you get keys, this is really top tier loot. The NPCs and vending machines are almost guaranteed. Some NPCs aren't 100% spawn rate, but some are. But if you land at a POI that has a high value NPC that you can buy like a good weapon from every game, that's really beneficial to you. Vending machines, same thing. Some POIs like Greasy Grove, for example. The gas station vending, same with Coney. The gas station vending is always a heals vending. So you can use that to your advantage if you're just really getting unlucky and not finding any heals. Same with slurp barrels. There's like some constants in the POI, and you really need to make sure you take advantage of them. And that kind of just comes down to learning your POI. And that's super important. Learn, if you're dropping at a different spot every game, you're probably not going to get as used to like where all the loot spawns in that location and how it plays out fighting that location. I would recommend trying to learn like a few different spots, like maybe like 3 or 4 across the map, and land at them as much as you can and really get used to fighting them. Know where all the loot is, know where all the chest spawns are, the floor loot, the coolers, the ammo boxes, the NPCs, where players like to land, how they like to play the area. There's so much little intricacies that come into playing early game. And if you're landing at a different spot every game, that could be fun. And, you know, it keeps the game fresh, but you're not going to be really good at fighting any of those locations at all or really playing out of any of those locations at all. So I would say try to pick a few spots and master those spots, learn all of the things I kind of just talked about for those spots and get used to it. And that will go a long way in helping you get out of the early game. And that will do a huge part in helping you like get a higher win rate and win more frequently in the game. Because like I said already, I think early game is the most random point in the game. You can kind of minimize it with some of the things I talk about, but early game RNG is still early game RNG. That is going to be it for this video. If you guys did find it helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Like I said below, comment if you would like to see a mid-game tips video, or just if you enjoyed this video. That would also be appreciated, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.